Our gospel lesson for today comes from the Gospel of Mark, the 9th chapter. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. Here ends our gospel reading. Mountaintop experience. That's what we're getting in this gospel reading for today. Literally and figuratively, we see the disciples go through what can only be described really as a mountaintop experience. They literally go up the mountain. But then Jesus is transfigured. His appearance transformed, revealed in a way that has been more or less veiled to this point. And then Jesus is joined by Moses and Elijah, and the disciples are allowed to see this truth in all of its unfiltered reality. And they are terrified. It says so. But they stick with it because, well, just imagine Jesus and Moses and Elijah and the glory of God shining through all of that. What do you say? What do you do? This is the culmination of Epiphany, transfiguration. It's no coincidence that we recall this story at the end of the season. From the beginning of January until now, we as a church have been hearing the stories of God's presence here on earth, the revealing of God through Jesus. And until we get to the resurrection, this is the culmination of that revelation. So what do you say? What do you do? Well, there's Peter's response. Peter, well, any of the disciples really, are always good individuals to take note of in the Bible. They really are the humans, I think, that a lot of times we might have been if we had been there in that situation. So whenever the disciples show up, I always pay attention and ask myself whether I might have done or said the same thing they did. In this case, I don't know if I'd have said something or if I would have just been so shocked, so stunned, that I wouldn't have known what to do or say. I honestly might have reacted like James or John, who are still, I guess, figuring out what to say or perhaps just taking it all in. Peter fills the silence, though. He suggests they build dwellings or something more permanent in this place where the transfiguration happened, something that would always be there on that mountaintop. And actually, I can understand that. After all they've been through, who wouldn't want to stay on that mountaintop and keep this experience going? I definitely understand that. If you've ever had a mountaintop faith or life experience, a moment when you can see or feel God's presence, a moment when the whole world just seemed to be working right, where what was happening was beyond the normal or plain or ordinary. Think of that time. It might have been at a camp or a conference or a worship service. It might have been working with a class or committee on a particular event or project. Might have been walking around in nature. Whatever it was, think of that moment. It's a best day of your life sort of scenario. I understand wanting to keep that going. It doesn't though, does it? That's just reality. Eventually, we go back to life and the work at hand. And that's true for the disciples too. They can't stay there. There's so much more to be done. But the experience doesn't disappear. It doesn't just vanish from existence. It happened, and they were there to see it. Jesus transfigured before them. Moses and Elijah there with him, and the voice of God commanding them. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. They have to go with Jesus back down the mountain and continue on with the work that they have to do. We, of course, can look ahead and know that they're going to the cross. It's going to be a difficult road. But on a certain level, I wonder if their experience has given them something to hold on to through the days ahead. Think back to your own experiences. I think there's a lesson in this for us. How times of joy can sustain us through times of sorrow. How remembering a lesson learned or a moment celebrated can give us energy for what's next or what we might be facing now. How we know that even as we celebrate an accomplishment or live in the moment of a mountaintop experience, we will have to continue on at some point. The world is just too big. There's just too much to do to simply hide away from it in our comfort zones or on our mountains. Eventually we, like the disciples, have to re-enter the world and continue the work of Christian life. And as we do, I hope we hear and remember that voice from the mountain. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. This is the voice that points us to our guide. If we're ever uncertain about where to begin, I hope these words echo for us and that we look to Jesus as our leader and our teacher and our example to follow. And I hope that our mountaintop moments sustain us for everything else, guiding us and inspiring us as we continue on. Amen.